There's a moment you don't notice until it's too late. You wake up one morning and although everything appears normal, sunlight through the window, your familiar routine unfolding as expected, there's a subtle dissonance humming beneath it all. Not pain, not panic, just a quiet unease like something is missing, but you can't quite place it. You go through the motions, coffee, conversations, laughter where it's required, gratitude where it's expected, and yet there's a strange emptiness trailing behind you like a forgotten thought. Not loud, not urgent, but persistent, as though a part of you is watching from somewhere deep inside, whispering, "You're not being honest." Of course, you brush it off. After all, you're doing what you're supposed to. You're being kind, polite, reasonable. You avoid conflict. You maintain the peace. You smile even when something inside you fractures. But here's where it begins. Not with a dramatic betrayal of values, but with the small daily compromises. The subtle nod when you wanted to shake your head. The silence when your truth rose like fire in your throat but never escaped. The moment you laughed at something that wounded you, just to fit in. And this is the paradox no one teaches you to notice. You can betray yourself without even realizing it. Not because you're weak, not because you're fake, but because somewhere along the way, you were taught that being liked is more important than being real. And so, inch by inch, truth becomes negotiable. We tend to think of betrayal as something external. Someone breaks your trust, someone lies, someone leaves. But what about the betrayal that happens quietly when you deny your own needs in order to meet someone else's expectations? That's the one that scars the deepest, because it doesn't just steal your energy, it erodes your identity. You begin to feel it in strange ways, a sudden tiredness that no sleep can fix, a loss of interest in things that once lit you up, a growing numbness in rooms filled with conversation. You laugh, but it feels automatic. You speak, but it doesn't sound like your voice. And yet you keep going, because you don't want to let anyone down, because it's not that bad. Because you convince yourself that this is just adulthood, this weight, this dullness, this gradual disappearance of self. But what if it's not? What if the real reason you feel disconnected isn't because something is wrong with you, but because you've slowly disconnected from yourself? Every yes you said while your body screamed no. Every smile you forced while your chest ached with suppressed truth. Every time you edited your truth to remain acceptable. They add up, and one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize who's looking back. So here's the question that brings it all into focus. What is the long-term cost of abandoning yourself in order to belong? What happens when you become so fluent in pleasing others that you forget how to speak your own language? What happens when your boundaries become so blurred that even you can't find the edges of who you are? What happens when the applause gets louder, but the part of you being celebrated isn't really you? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary, because behind every people pleaser, every perfectionist, every overly nice person, there is usually a deeper story of silence, story of fear, a story of a self that once tried to speak and was taught not to. But the body remembers, the soul remembers, and eventually the exhaustion you carry isn't just from doing too much, it's from being too little of who you really are. So now, take a breath, because this isn't about blame, this is about clarity, about beginning the slow, necessary process of turning toward yourself. After years of turning away, the first step, recognizing that you've been taught to survive in ways that betray you. And the second, asking yourself, without judgment, without shame, when did I stop choosing me? Self-betrayal doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's not a random malfunction of willpower or a flaw in character. It's learned carefully, quietly, and often long before we have the words to describe it. You're not born betraying yourself. You're taught to, not through direct commands, but through thousands of subtle signals. It begins in childhood when love is confused with approval and safety becomes conditional. When the child expresses sadness and is told, "You're fine." When anger is punished instead of understood. When joy is too loud, needs are too much. Curiosity becomes disobedience. The lesson is absorbed, not explained. To be accepted, you must edit yourself. So you begin to split. The real self, the wild, intuitive, honest self, goes underground. In its place, you construct a version of you that's easier to manage, easier to love, easier to control. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive social life. But the deeper tragedy is that we don't just wear the mask. We forget we're wearing it. Over time, the mask becomes the face, and the self becomes a stranger. Gabor Maté writes that when a child is forced to choose between attachment and authenticity, they will always choose attachment. Because to a child, losing connection to caregivers feels like death, so the self is sacrificed to maintain belonging. And this survival strategy doesn't disappear with age, it just becomes more sophisticated. We don't scream when we're hurt, we joke. We don't express anger, we rationalize. We don't cry, we stay productive. We become experts in hiding what we feel, even from ourselves. But here's the cost. The more you abandon your truth, the harder it becomes to feel anything at all. You become emotionally flat, not because you're broken, but because you're trained. Conditioned to stay agreeable, taught to fear your own edges, taught to fear conflict, to avoid disapproval, to disappear in order to survive. This isn't personal failure, it's cultural design. We live in a society that rewards compliance and punishes depth, a society that teaches us to package ourselves for approval, where niceness is confused with goodness, and success is often the reward for strategic self-denial. Think of how early it begins. We're praised for being quiet, obedient, easy. We're told to sit still, smile, don't question. And so we do. But the problem with being easy to love is that it often requires being hard on yourself. Arthur Schopenhauer, ever the pessimist, believed that human desire is a source of endless suffering, that to want is to ache. But what happens when we're trained to suppress even the ache itself? Desire doesn't vanish, it turns inward, becomes fatigue, apathy, self-blame. We wonder why we're tired, but don't realize we've been holding ourselves hostage with our own silence. And in that silence grows a lie. Maybe this version of me is enough. But the body knows otherwise. Your nervous system doesn't respond to masks. It responds to truth. And when you live out of alignment with your inner world, your physiology protests. Stress hormones spike. Sleep becomes shallow. Fatigue sets in. But no doctor can diagnose what you've lost because it's not in your blood. It's in your being. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that we are condemned to be free, that we are responsible for choosing who we become. But the problem is, if your choices are based on a false self, are they truly free? You think you're making decisions, but it's not really you deciding. It's the persona, the role, the character you were trained to play. So even your success feels hollow. Even your relationships feel distant because they're not connecting to you. They're connecting to the version of you you've constructed for survival. And the more praise you receive for that version, the more trapped you feel. Because to show your true self now would mean risking the love you earned with your performance. That's the prison of self-betrayal. A golden cage, built from praise, admiration, and acceptance. But inside, it's cold, silent, suffocating. And here's the part no one tells you. The longer you stay in that cage, the more you forget there was ever a door. You begin to think the mask is you, that this quiet ache is just life, that maybe everyone feels this way, and they're just better at hiding it, but something in you resists. It always does, because self-betrayal is not sustainable. It may buy you time, safety, validation, but it will never bring you home to yourself. And the more you ignore it, the louder the symptoms get. Fatigue, emotional numbness, resentment, sudden breakdowns, or worse, the slow death of aliveness that no one notices because you're still functioning. This is not who you are, it's who you became to be loved. And somewhere beneath the habits, the masks, the nice behavior, the self you buried is still waiting, not to be perfect, not to be right, but simply to be real. Self-betrayal rarely screams, it whispers, and over time, those whispers become your baseline. You stop noticing how much you censor yourself, how often you second-guess your needs, how easily "I'm fine" becomes your default state, even when you're breaking inside. On the outside, everything functions. You answer messages, you meet deadlines, you smile in conversations. But inside, your aliveness is dimming, not all at once, but slowly, like a flame starving for oxygen. The problem is, the world rewards the performance. The more agreeable you are, the more approval you get. The more you suppress, the more you're praised for being strong. And so the cycle continues. You become what others need you to be, until you forget what you need. The consequences aren't always visible, but they're everywhere. You begin to feel invisible in your own life. You can't tell if your relationships are real or just roles you're playing. You start craving solitude, not for peace, but for relief from pretending. Joy feels distant. Rest doesn't restore you. And worst of all, you stop trusting your own voice. Because how can you trust a voice you've ignored for years? You might even start to resent others, not because of what they did, but because you handed them your truth, and they didn't even know it. And still, you keep going, because what's the alternative? To disappoint people? To risk being misunderstood? To admit that the life you built might not be yours at all? That's terrifying, so instead you cope. You numb. You overfiction. You keep moving. But here's what no one tells you. Chronic self-abandonment looks like discipline. It looks like kindness. It looks like success. Until one day the cracks show. In your health, in your relationships, in your joy. You can only betray your truth for so long before it turns against you. And when it does, it doesn't ask politely. It roars. Or worse, it disappears entirely, and you're left with silence. Not peace, just emptiness. It starts with a pause. Not a grand declaration, not a dramatic change, just a moment of stillness. A moment where you finally stop running, where you look yourself in the eye and whisper, "I'm tired of pretending." This is the moment of rebellion, not against the world, but against the story you were told to live. You don't break free by being louder. You break free by being truer. And truth doesn't begin in confrontation. It begins in recognition. You start noticing when you say yes out of fear, when your smile is a disguise, when you nod, but everything in your body pulls away. You begin to listen to your hesitation, your discomfort, your quiet no. And slowly you stop apologizing for needing what you need. You stop over-explaining your truth. You stop shrinking for the comfort of others. This isn't easy. It never is. Because the moment you stop betraying yourself, you start disappointing others. And for a while that feels unbearable. Because self-betrayal gave you something, acceptance, approval, safety, but what it took from you was far greater. So you learn to let the disapproval come. Let the silence grow between you and the people who only knew the mask. Let things fall apart, if they must, because what remains after the collapse is real. You begin to rebuild from honesty, not obligation, alignment, not performance. You speak more slowly, you choose more intentionally, you rest. Not because you earned it, but because you deserve it. And maybe for the first time you hear your voice, unfiltered, unedited. It's quieter than you expected, but strong, steady, yours. And here's where change becomes real, not in thought, but in practice. Try this. Each time you catch yourself saying yes too quickly, pause, ask, "Is this true?" Buy time if you need it. Say, "Let me get back to you." That one sentence is a door back to yourself. Or this. When you feel a familiar pressure to be likable, try asking, "What do I want in this moment?" You don't have to act on it yet. Just ask. The question itself reawakens your agency. And one more. Practice micro-honesty. You don't have to be radically vulnerable with everyone, but start with one small truth a day, something you usually hide. Say it gently. Say it clearly. And then, stay. These aren't hacks to change your life overnight. They're tools to help you come home. To stop outsourcing your decisions to guilt, fear, or habit. To anchor back into what is real. You'll lose things along the way, relationships that thrived on your silence, sermons that depended on your sacrifice, versions of you that were never yours to begin with, but in their place, something else will grow. Clarity, wholeness, peace that doesn't come from approval, but from presence. This is not the kind of success the world celebrates. It's the kind that lets you sleep at night, the kind that lets you look in the mirror and see someone whole. Because the true rebellion isn't in fighting others. It's in no longer fighting yourself. The hardest part of coming home to yourself is realizing you left. Not all at once, but slowly, silently, in the name of survival, in the name of love, in the name of being good. But here's the truth you've been circling this whole time. You were never meant to become someone else to be worthy of love. The betrayal was never that you changed. It was that you forgot who you were before the masks, before the roles, before you made yourself smaller just to be chosen. Your soul didn't give up. It went quiet. It waited. Waited for the day you'd hear the silence, not as absence, but as invitation. You don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to become extraordinary. You need to return to the voice before performance, to the no before guilt, to the version of you who once dared to want, to speak, to take up space. You are not here to be digestible. You are not here to be tolerated. You are not here to be efficient at betraying your own needs. You are here to be whole. And wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means integrity. It means your inner world and outer life finally speaking the same language. This is the final truth. The most dangerous lie you will ever tell is the one you whisper to keep the peace. Because a peace that costs your voice is not peace. It's prison. So stop. Stop abandoning yourself for comfort. Stop negotiating your truth to be acceptable. Stop pretending that numbness is a sign of maturity. The moment you reclaim your truth, even trembling, you reclaim your power. And yes, the fear will still be there, but so will something else. Stillness, strength, a clarity that can no longer be touched by performance. Because when you finally decide to stop betraying yourself, you don't just feel better, you become someone new, someone honest, someone awake, someone free. So if you're looking for permission, let this be it. Come back. Come back to the place inside you that never left. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are not wrong for wanting more than a life built on silence. You are simply home. And this time, you're staying. Welcome back. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to Mind Hacks, share your thoughts in the comments, and stay close. We're just getting started.